New atheism is actually shrinking. Many people don't know why. I have my theories on that, but I came across an article that talks about this, mindmatters.ai, which I'm going to be sharing with you today. My thought up front is that there's a number of reasons. Number one is vacuous. It doesn't really give us an explanation for the world atheism, especially new atheism. Number two, a lot of the old guard are down, are gone, and there's been a woke culture that has sprung up in its place. And third, I think there's a lot of new atheists that have this idea of a lack of belief in God instead of I do not believe that God exists. And when you say I lack a belief in God, you become unreasonable and irrational and anti-intellectual. You become almost like a woke person in a way because everything is about you and how you think, and you are the ultimate truth arbiter for the world. Because you cannot, quote unquote, you do not find proof for God's existence, you think that you have a lack of belief in God. And so when you do this, you become anti-intellectual and you become irrational and unreasonable. And I think this turns a lot of people off, myself included, to even discussing with atheists about their view. And you we pretty much are ignoring the atheist who does that because they have nothing to add to the discussion. They have no good rational reasons for their belief except for to criticize other people's beliefs. That's all they're good at. And that's the easy part. You can criticize someone else's belief all day long. I can criticize atheism all day long and tear it to bits. That's the easy part. The hard part is creating a system and worldview that makes sense. And atheists like to play this mind game, this word game, to redefine words that have been known for years to mean one thing, and then now we have changed the definition. Just like even in science, people have changed the definition of, let's say, nothing, and now it means something, whatever that means. Everything came from nothing at the beginning. Well, now certain physicists are like, oh, well, nothing actually means a something. Well, okay, now you're changing the definitions of the long-standing words, just like in our woke culture today. When I say woke, I'm talking about the social justice and all that stuff. We're changing those definitions, and when we do that, we're impacting our life. This article that I'm be showing you here, let me just click it on here. Um, Actually talks about this. New atheism is shrinking, and it's not entirely clear why. Quick side note here, down below, I have a link that takes you to a quick guide where science and Christianity are not only compatible, but where science points to the creator. If you want that, feel free to grab it down below. Now, back to the video. The top point here says this. Now, there's an eerie and fashionable silence. That fashionable media are beginning to notice, for one thing, it's affecting Richard Dawkins. That is true. I think that's definitely true. Let's go through it together. At one time, New Atheism was riding a wave. Richard Dawkins, an example, was very cool. He was very cool. We had Daniel Dennett, Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens, etc., who were all these four guys were considered the four horsemen of the atheist movement. But now that it is interesting that it's becoming more and more silent. It's becoming less and less interesting. All you hear is just, I lack belief in God. God's not, I don't want to be a Christian. And then we also seen people who are not Christian, who are more left-leaning and let's say less Christian inclined, and now are coming towards Christ. There is a well-known atheist, and I cannot pronounce her name, so you have to forgive me. Erin Haresha Ali, or however you pronounce her name, you may know. Feel free to correct me down below how to pronounce it. But she was quite well known in the whole atheist movement, and she came to Christ. Even Richard Dawkins has made comments that Christianity, as a framework, as a worldview, is actually fairly positive. Then we get a lot of these other types of people, like Anthony Flew, as this point makes, where Anthony Flew is really interested, or was interested before he died, in God, and thinking that maybe a theistic, or at least some sort of deistic framework for the world really makes sense. In his book, There Is a God, and Anthony Flew was a well-known atheist in the past. We can also think about people like even Tom Holland, who is agnostic, and he's not all a Christian, or Jordan Peterson. These guys are not all Christian people, but And Jordan Peterson is kind of a mixed bag because he seems to be halfway Christian, but not. And I'm not sure what his latest stance on Christ is, but it seems kind of confusing most of the time. So I'll stay out of that. But for years, though, he was not. Or there's another guy named Rodney Stark. He wrote a lot of books on Christianity and religion and the history of religion, sociology and religion. Interesting guy, agnostic for many years. In fact, most of his life is agnostic, even though he was writing many books that were presenting the world in a very positive light for Christianity. At the end of his life, I think he became some sort of nominal Christian, maybe went to some sort of mainline denomination. But even him, and you can see a shift in even his mindset, where he was sympathetic to Christians, but he was more agnostic, like a Tom Holland type of person. And he wrote a lot, much like Tom Holland, and made a lot of the same points about how that we live in a world that's created by Christians, and it does affect us, how we think and how we act, and that we would be totally uncomfortable in other types of situations, other types of world, other types of frameworks of the world, like ancient Rome or ancient Greco-Roman world. We would be out of place in that world. We would be uncomfortable. So and another thing that both Tom Holland makes, the point that Tom Holland makes and Rodney Stark make, both of them are agnostic, by the way, and besides Rodney Stark, who later at the very end of his life became some sort of nominal Christian, hopefully a solid Christian. I don't know that. That's between him and God. Um, they both defended the Christian framework. And like I said before, Richard Dawkins even came into the defense of Christianity a while back, interestingly enough. But there's also a problem that this article talks about, is that, and I can't say the word here online because I think that this can get in trouble on YouTube, but there is a problem within the atheist community, which you can read on the screen, with a lot of people have problems with their mental stability, and they unalive themselves, which is sad. And this is sad, and it's not surprising though, because if you're an atheist, there is really no good meaning, there's really no good reason to live in the world. You struggle with this, and I think a lot of people who are this way or atheists, they do struggle with mental issues, sadly enough. That's where I love to reach out to them, but a lot of times this struggles with me because they claim to have a lack of belief. And when they have a lack of belief, they just become irrational and unreasonable. You just can't communicate with them. And a lot of people are the same boat as me. It's like, well, why communicate with someone who cannot even articulate what they believe and why, but rather hide under the framework of, like, I just lack a belief in God. But they are somewhat isolated in a way, and I think, and they don't have, they don't maybe have the greatest, maybe they're intellectual in one way, but just because you're smart doesn't mean that you know everything. I just heard two doctors talking about this just recently on YouTube, one PhD and one MD, talking about that, how a lot of these well-known, some of the most super smart people in the world who have won different awards for some advancement that they came up with, also believed some sort of crazy conspiracy theory that the rest of us are like, what are you thinking? I think it's the same way within the world of atheism. A lot of these guys are not that dumb at all. Most of the time they're guys, but sometimes they're women as well. A lot of these people are not dumb. They're really, really smart. But by being that way, they also get the idea of God extremely wrong, and the whole idea of atheism extremely wrong as well.